Welcome back, everyone. We're so thankful to have you all here. How many of you, can I just see a show of hands, how many of you have been here since this morning? Since this morning. Okay, all right, good for you. Thank you. We are pleased to have our next speakers getting ready, and I'm going to let follow through, introduce them, but I'm here as the session host just to remind folks once again, as we do with each session, about our beloved community standards and statement of just how we care for one another in this space and how we talk to one another and think about how we communicate one with another, and that we are here to build community, we're here to strengthen one another and to encourage one another, but also here to share our thoughts, whether you think people will agree or not. This is the space where we are able to care for one another in our differences and in the different ways in which we see the world. And so just want to offer that up as we move into this next session and possibly a question and answer time. So thank you so much, and I now turn it over to Father David Carew.
Thank you, Bernie. Amen. Welcome to everybody to our afternoon session. Welcome to How a House Becomes a Home, bringing community into classroom teaching and learning experiences. We thank you so much for attending this year's MLK Junior Convocation. We hope you engage in as much as you can and you walk away inspired and moved to be positive, active participants in our World House. This afternoon you have the opportunity to hear from St. Michael's colleague, Jolivette Anderson-douoning, and UVM colleague, Edwin Owusu. First of all, Jolivette, also known as Dr. Jolivette, to her students, is an American Studies scholar and history professor who specializes in the history of segregated spaces in North Louisiana during and after World War II. The Hollywood neighborhood where she grew up with her parents and siblings was a product of a Jim Crow segregation, a time when dividing people and denying access to public spaces and educational opportunities based on race was legal in the United States. The treatment of Black Americans was unequal and unjust, thus the need for the civil rights movement of the late 1800s into the modern day civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s and beyond. Jolivette examines the lived experience of Black Americans in 5 areas: the family house, the schoolhouse, the church house, the workhouse, and the playhouse. Each house or shelter of existence is a space where human activity took place. The acts of living, learning, worshiping, laboring, and leisure activities happened in segregated Black spaces just as they did in non-Black spaces. Explaining how Black Americans lived ordinary lives from day to day serves to interrupt and disrupt commonly held stereotypes about Black families, Black intelligence, faith and spiritual practices, work ethic, and Black joy. Jolivette is the director of the Institute of Equity and Justice here at St. Michael's, and we say welcome to her. Edwin Owusu holds a Master of Arts degree. He's known artistically as SINNN, spelled S-I-N-N-N. He tells me that's for copyright purposes, but it stands for Strength in Numbers. He's a hip-hop artist, public speaking instructor, and debate coach at the University of Vermont, whose work treats hip-hop as both a creative practice and a teaching methodology. In his courses and coaching, he brings performance, storytelling, and critical argumentation together, so students experience speech, debate, and composition the way he approaches writing verses and building live shows. Owusu's music and research focus on themes of depression, mental health, and social justice, and he designs community projects like Hip Hop for Flood Relief and events highlighting the hip hop diaspora that double as both performances and public pedagogy. After returning to graduate school at his mother's urging, he committed to building a career where academia and hip hop are 2 sides of the same coin, using his scholarship, events, and recordings to create spaces for healing, dialogue, and cultural empowerment. And we say, welcome to Edwin Owusu. And I turn the mic over to them.
Mic check. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for taking the time to come out and share with Edwin and myself. I'm going to get started by giving you all a little bit of background about my research, by showing you a little bit of history on the screen and talking you through it. And then Edwin and I are going to have a conversation with each other and with you, and he's going to talk a little bit about his background. And then we have some information and action that we want you to take at the end. So is everybody good with that mini agenda? Yes, all right, so let's get going. How a house becomes a home. Actually, this is an old Luther Vandross song. Actually, I think the Carpenters sang it before he sang it. But what we're talking about today is how Edwin and I actually came together as 2 individuals who are artists, but also who work in institutions, predominantly white institutions in Vermont, and how we bring who we are as human beings from the communities that raised us into the classroom. So I'm going to talk to you today about Mrs. Goldlina. Mrs. Goldlina is my grandmother, and this, the excerpts you see here in writing is her handwriting. She was born in 1920 in Longstreet, Louisiana. She lived in Longstreet, she lived in Keachai, and eventually in Keithville, Louisiana, which were rural areas outside of the big city called Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where I was born. Here it says April 5th, 1948, got $20 from Mrs. Gillum. April 19, 1948, got $10 from Mrs. Gillum. Put 4 sacks of fertilizer under corn. It is $2 a sack. July 10, 1948, Mrs. Gillum let Will hold $3, 6-sack fertilizer under his, and the paper cut off just before I could understand that says cotton. All right? So if we're looking at this in 1948, we're looking at my grandmother and my step-grandfather, right? And it tells you here, if you read the context, that they were farmers. They farmed and they had their own corn, they had their own cotton. And what they probably did with it was use what they needed for themselves and sold the rest. okay, to get money, to earn income. And that's how they lived, all right? Next, this is the migration that we talk about when we say rural to urban migration. And we talk about how people move from rural areas into the city. And here it says, January 2nd, 1949, moved to Shreveport to Hollywood Avenue. Helen them, it's cut off a little bit, I think I know what it says by now. Helen them start to school, right? On January the 3rd, all right? So what this tells me from this, reading the context clues here, is that they moved from rural Louisiana into the city of Shreveport. They moved to a place called Hollywood Avenue, which is still there. And when they moved to Hollywood Avenue, the very next day, her children, who were at that's actually my mother's birthday. She turned 9 years old on that day. And she said when they moved to the city, she was surprised to see a stove that worked without having to put wood in it to make it heat up. So this is the time period that we're living in. This is the technology that we're dealing with. All right, so you can't just push a button in the microwave. You can't just turn on something and gas comes in the stove. You have to have wood. So somebody had to chop that wood. Somebody had to put that wood in the oven. Somebody had to know how to light that wood. And you had to know how to cook on certain kinds of stoves. So I want you to paint a picture and put yourself in this particular time period to know that this is very different from the way that we are living now and the conveniences that we have today. Okay, is everybody with me so far? All right. So because my mother and my aunt and uncle were able to go to school, be enrolled into school the very next day, what does that tell us? It tells us that there was already a school called the Hollywood School in the neighborhood that they moved into. And based on my research on the schoolhouse chapter of my dissertation, the Hollywood School was built by Black people who in this segregated neighborhood without very much assistance from the city, the parish, or the state, because Black parents felt that wanted their children to be educated. Now, on the 1930 census, when my grandmother was 10 years old, it marked her as literate. It means she could read and write. Read, write, and cipher, as they used to say, meaning count numbers, okay? So because she was literate at age 10, everybody at that time period was not literate, could not read and write. So some kind of way she learned how to read and write. And one day when I was traveling from Shreveport to Houston, going the back roads, I passed through Long Street. And if you blink your eyes, you're gonna miss it, okay? You driving through Long Street, you blink, and you're out of Long Street, Louisiana. But there was a historical marker on the side of the road, and I was like, let me stop to see what this is. And it was the actual Rosenwald School that Booker T. Washington's students built. They built hundreds, if not thousands, of Rosenwald schools specifically to educate Black children in the South, out of Tuskegee, Booker T. Washington's work. So this is the history that impacted my family directly, right? So when you talk about Booker T. Washington and his work, my grandmother was impacted, therefore I was impacted, therefore now you have been impacted, because I'm a part of St. Mike's and we are in this house together and making it a home together, okay? So as we move forward, she talks about buying a lot, all right? So she says, Will Golina bought a lot, and she talks about how much they paid down on it. And here, this last line, she says, July 1 paid for it, paid the lot. So that was a dirt lot that she and my step-grandfather Willie purchased for $450, okay? And they paid it in installments. And this is important because the advertisements in the local newspaper called the Shreveport Sun said, quote unquote, colored lots for sale. It didn't mean the lot itself was colored. It meant that the people had to be colored to purchase it, because they intentionally set aside land only for Black people to purchase because they were segregating the city based off of urban planning and all of that. Only Black people could live in certain areas, all right? And so that is why when I say I study segregated spaces and that I grew up in a segregated space, this was segregation by design. It wasn't segregation by choice. Y'all understand? Y'all with me so far? Okay, so they bought the lot, but there's nothing on the lot, it's just a dirt lot. It's 50 by 100 feet. 100 feet long, 50 feet wide. okay? So imagine that amount of space and what kind of house you could possibly build in that space. And imagine the patience that one has to pay in installments. Well, one question you might have is, well, where'd they get the money? They got the money from selling their corn and cotton to be able to move to the city, but where'd they get that money to continue, right? Mrs. Goldlina's ledger. That's the name of my dissertation. But here is what my grandmother wrote down when she got hired at the chair factory. So that's how she earned money. North Louisiana had North Louisiana pine, virgin forest of pine. So that pine tree, those pine trees became a way for people to build chairs, build furniture, cut lumber for wood, all of that. So she worked at the chair factory, and my step-grandfather, Willie Abraham, worked in the lumber yard at Kenrod. And she wrote down what she did to earn money. At this time in Louisiana, this was a time in the 1940s where we were moving and transitioning from hand-picked cotton laborer, all right, into machines, but North Louisiana didn't have the machines yet. All right, there were only, I think, 8 of them, according to my research, 8 of them in the nation at the time, if I'm remembering my research correctly, okay? And so because of that, they still needed hand-picked cotton laborers. So she labored in the cotton field by choice. So I need you to think as a historian, understand that when someone talks about not even stereotyping, but trying to denigrate and belittle black people because they pick cotton and saying the horrific things like, thank your granddaddy for my shirt, right? Which is insulting, and trying to diminish people because of the work that they do, right? So when we talk about her working in the cotton field, that cotton that she picked at Red River Cotton in Louisiana, in the 1800s, it got shipped down the Red River to the Mississippi and it went straight over to Liverpool, England. So we're talking about international trade happening right here in the US in the 1800s. But by the 1940s, when she was out there working and picking cotton, it was good money, very good money, because they needed the laborers, all right? So this is what she wrote down about how much she made. And this is the ledger that I put together based off of her handwriting, so you can see the differences. So when she made $20.40 that first week, that was as of August 2020, based on the inflation calculator, that was actually worth $230.74 that week. So you ask yourself, what can you do with $230 today, in 2025, or in 2020? Right? Is that some groceries? Is that some gas for the car? What can $230 do for you in a week? All right? So now you have an idea about where she got her money from her labor, right? Which is the chapter 3 called the labor house, the workhouse. All right? So here's the house, okay? In 1950, this is a record of her labor and her living expenses. But what you can see here is, on this page it says, April 17, 1950, Mr. John started building on my house. And here she lists what she paid people for building her house, right? So she could read, she could write, she could cipher, she could do math, she could do numbers, she could add and subtract. She could keep records of the work that she did and records of the things that she purchased and who she paid. So the interpretation or the misinformation that we have about Black Americans in segregated spaces, we tend to get all of our information from media. If it isn't sports, if it isn't music and hip hop, in this day and age, you think that is the total sum of who Black people are, perhaps, and it's not. So we're talking about the 1920s when she was born, all the way up to 1940 when my mother was born, all right? And then my sister was born in 64, I was born in 68. I have 2 brothers that were born in 71 and 73, and I have a baby sister that was born in 1980. And throughout that time, as I tell my students in my class, there were racial identifiers on our birth certificates. On my mother and father, born in 1937 and 1940, race of parent was listed, I think, as colored, right? And I think it was around the same, all right? For me and my sister, it was either race of parents, colored, or Negro, right? By 1980, the race of parents on my baby sister's birth certificate was Black. Same family, same address, from 1965 up until the time my little sister was born and beyond. All of those identifiers. So a lot of times, for those of you that have not had my class, you have not heard me say this, the term Negro is not a racial epithet in the way that the other word is that you hear in hip-hop music, okay? It's not the same. The N word that I'm talking about, the Negro word, is on documents. It's on birth certificates. You will hear Dr. Martin Luther King use the term Negro to refer to black people, who we now call black people or African Americans. It's important to understand this as an educated person, as a person who's gone to college. Know the difference between what's a racial epithet and what's an outdated term that you don't call people anymore. Does that make sense? So you don't go around calling people, oh, the Negro people. No, don't do that. It's not gonna turn out too good, okay? It's not gonna work in your face, all right? So moving forward, just want you to see this because I was not going to be able to do a dissertation just based off of feelings or what my grandmother told me or what my mother told me. I needed documentation because Purdue University needs documents. You need historical documents. This is a historical document that tells us about how black people were living, working, worshiping, leisure time, all of that in the context of growing up in the South. And my family history goes back to North Louisiana all the way to the 1750s. They turned Irish in the 1750s, okay, but they're still my people, all right? I'm kidding, I'm very serious about that, all right? All right, and this is just another ledger or diagram, basically to show you the same thing that I talked about before. All right, so shelters of existence, as Father Thru mentioned in the introduction of myself and Edwin, the family house is how we live, all right? I've demonstrated to you that my grandmother and my step-grandfather, through their labor, through their work, through their motivation, through their discipline, right? All of these values, they managed to buy a lot and build a house. And she used to babysit us in that very house. So I have memories of that house, okay? They were living in that house before there was a electric meter put on it. They were living in it before they had actual window panes in the house. They bit by bit made their way to get that house, adding on to it little by little as they went along, okay? And there's a whole lot of other stories about that. The church house, my grandmother was an usher. She was the person that kept the records and the treasurer for the usher board at the church. And we talked about the workhouse based off her labor, working at the chair factory and also working in cotton fields. And as far as the playhouse is concerned, the leisure activities, my grandmother paid for music lessons for my mother and her siblings. And my mother started playing piano professionally for the church when she was 15 years old, because my grandmother made that investment into getting them music lessons, all right? So all of this is embedded inside of the black family structure that is a part of the neighborhood I grew up in, and they created this physical space, this house, right? But that physical space was also a spiritual space. Because when we talk about home, turning a house into a home, we're not just talking about a physical building. We're talking about the house within, right? We have a little song called This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine, right? The light is within. And that is the home within that we're talking about. It's like our president always says, right? Who are you and whose are you? Think about that. Think about what that means for you and how you want to see the world, okay? So with that, here are a couple of questions. Some of my students might be able to ask these, but I want to invite Edwin up to talk about these two questions. I asked myself, what did I learn from growing up in segregated neighborhoods in the U.S., on the U.S. South, specifically North Louisiana? How do lived experiences and research show up in my pedagogy and teaching method? I kind of answered one of those questions by explaining to you this background, but now I want to turn it over to Edwin for him to respond to what he's heard, but I also want him to talk about how he grew up and his lived experiences so that you have an understanding how we connected to work together in the classroom around this particular pedagogy that we worked last semester and hopefully into the future some more, right? I'll turn it over to you.
Am I audible? Good. First, mid-session round of applause for Dr. Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me. When Dr. Anderson and I got together right around the end of last summer to have some coffee and talk about what this collaboration could look like. It started off as a conversation about folks who are in academia, working in predominantly white institutions, but also recognize the importance of fostering conversations that move community forward, because we are also artists, and that is an essential part of what we do. I think as I heard you talk, and then as I heard, I believe it was Bernita speak, what is unique about the opportunity we have in the current moment is that it really does give us an opportunity to have as many people speak truth to power as possible. It was the case many moons ago, as you had alluded to, that we did not have as many opportunities as we had for as many people to do things or be in as many places, or even for there to be legitimacy attached to their existence in the way that we have it today. And so the work that you have done and continue to do is so intrinsically important to how we move forward as a community. And so I wanted to take some time to reflect on that, and thank you for that. I was born in Ghana, West Africa. I came to the United States in 1993, the son of immigrants. My relationship to both academia and essentially to culture in this country comes from foundational Black Americans. I went to New York City first. I grew up in Harlem, New York. My parents got divorced and we moved to the Bronx. And then somehow I found debate. As a ninth grader, social studies class, fast forward to graduating, and a UVM professor who was coming into the inner city of New York and helping teach inner city kids research and debate skills said, come to UVM and we'll figure out the financial aid stuff. But before that, when I was in New York City, hip hop was the first cultural piece of relevance that I got when I was here in the United States, or when I got here. And that made an impact on me. So from the point of learning what it was that folks who were speaking about their lived experience, literally, and then trying to make a way out of that, I learned, oh, there is a way for me to share my life, my lived experience, and then have people have to hold court or listen to me talk. If I put it in prose, if I put it in music, if they are receiving it or if they have it, well, that means that they've made a choice to invest that time and listen to whatever it is that I have to say. And so music became vitally important to me because it really helped me understand that that type of expression was possible for me. But then finding speech and debate refined that aspect of who I was, so that I wasn't just taking in music, right? Because one thing about becoming a musician, or I think about, at least what happened to me, is you hear someone speak or you hear someone do a thing and you're like, that is amazing, and then you try to emulate it. But if you are invested enough in the process, at some point you keep going and it takes over and there's a congealing that happens between who you are, the art, and you finding your own path. And that's what happened to me. And so that's why you hear in the intro that there's a blend of hip-hop pedagogy, academia, and lived experience that informs how I do what I do. There's a reason why I can be called to perform in a public library. It's the same day, and then probably show up at Higher Ground that same night and perform there as well. It is because the music is a reflection of lived experience, how it has connected me to culture, and specifically how that relates to how I move in the world and how I connect to other people. So when Dr. Anderson-douoning and I got together, we went through a series of events. And one of those that was really, really impactful to me was coming into the classroom to have debate sessions with students. Because debate shaped me so deeply, I found it helping students to understand, one, not only that they have a place in the world, but also that the things they have to say matter, and that there's a way for them to do that and have meaningful conversations has really, really shaped me. I apologize for using really, really so much. I should know better. As a debate coach, I'll give you a quick anecdote. As a debate coach, there's something we do. So you'll come to practice, for example, and let's say Dr. Douoning has given a 7-minute speech is over. Here I am as a debate coach. That was a great speech, Jolivette. I really loved the intro statement. It was strong, but I counted 43 ums. Dr. Anderson will go, oh, okay. The next speech they give, I might say that was 15 ums that time. And by the next speech, it might be only 3. But that's one of those things that you don't know unless you are right in the activity or you're immersed in the field. I've been doing it so long that that's natural and comes to me. But all of the things that we do are about shaping the kind of engagements that we want to have. We always say that a debate cannot happen unless you have good faith. That means that both sides come to the conversation willing to be moved from their original position, right? I cannot say to you, yeah, let's discuss abortion rights, or let's have a conversation about whether or not we think that America should constitutionalize the right to vote, for example, if I don't think that in that conversation I can realistically and I'm willing to consider genuinely what the other side has to offer. And that foundation is why I think that speech and debate and rhetoric and us finding a conversation that makes it meaningful enough that we can bring each other into community is vital. And that is that was the foundation of a lot of the work that we did. I brought in some of my debate students from the University of Vermont, and we did a public debate on campus. Because that's some of the stuff that helps community move forward, right? Some of the work we did in the classroom was on the principles of the Laudato Si. And thinking about not just is St. Michael's doing the work, but if it is not, what are the parts of the conversation that need to be brought to bear so that it can excel in those areas? And again, those are some of the ways in which we bridge the gap between lived experience, what is happening, and then how do we move the conversation forward while adapting and creating new skills. When I heard you talk again about the 5 areas that you chose, it made me also reflect on what was the impact that I have felt as an immigrant, having moved to this country and then gone through all versions of that in the spaces that I have been in. And I can say that that also reinforces the work that you and I do. There are some folks in our community who think that we should be insular, that we should focus on the folks who look like us because we have suffered so much. And then there are those of us like you and I who know that the work has to be done on all fronts. There is no front on which marginalized folks don't need representation or a seat at the table or the ability to voice our concerns or have agency. And so here we are continuing to do that work. I walked in and I saw Dr. Douoning sitting back there on the laptop and I said, you just keep going, don't you? Right? And that is because the work keeps going. And so often it becomes the case that we, doing this work, have to take time, make space for ourselves to say, hey, sister, I see you, I love you, take some time for respite, because if you're not recharged, you cannot get back in it the way you need to. And because it is an existential question, right? Like, it's not about a choice of being black. For you, you cannot walk away from being a black woman. Your lived experience means that you have to be ever vigilant and ready and on point, on guard, putting on your best. So, I see you, and I want to say that as you have been telling us what this work means to you and you doing it, as a black man, I want to let you know that on this day, sister, you were seen, we honor you, and you making it a thing that history will not be forgotten as we move forward, especially in these times. I was really thankful that you invited me into the conversation that you did early at the end of summer. I'm thankful for the process that we had. I was thankful to meet your students, all of whom were amazing. I was thankful that my students were invited into the St. Michael's community. They had an amazing time and are looking forward to coming back to the other things that we do. So as I wrap up, what I would like to leave you all with is that the work that the folks here are doing as a community for you all as students is impactful. It is not that way on every campus. It is not that way, it is not done that way with intention in all of the other spaces, and you've seen that show itself to be true in the times that we are in. So not only do we need to hold each other up, but we need to also make sure that we give each other a nod in the times where you see folks doing the things that really mean that we are moving community forward, because those are the times in which you give a little bit more resolve to somebody and say, hey, we appreciated that. And so today of all days, they say the man was multifaceted, and often it is said that he can be somewhat caricatured. But I think that at the core has always been a willingness from MLK to say we need to speak truth to power. And that is really at the core of how I move throughout the world and what informs the work that I do both as a debate coach and as a musician who tries to tackle themes that make sense to all of our lives. So thank you again for having me. I look forward to doing more work with you, Doctor. Thank you.
I would also like to add that the work that we do together also is very much the same work or in alignment with what you all are learning, because this is a liberal arts college, and as who's been in my class? Raise your hand. Okay, so you'll know liber means to free, right? And you'll also know that I've talked to you and my students about Catholic social teachings and the Catholic intellectual tradition and the dignity of all human beings. All of this is connected to those tenets and the work that we all must do to better society, to better ourselves, to better our surroundings, all right? So I often wonder how I got here, I really do. But when they told me that I won the fellowship, the inaugural Edmondite African American Fellowship, right? It's named for the Edmondites. And that's how I got here to Vermont to finish my dissertation. But I was of the mindset that you're not gonna call me something that I don't know what it is. What is an Edmondite, okay? And in my research and finding out who the Edmondites, the Society of St. Edmund, who the Edmondites are, I was like, oh, these are my people, right? Because of the work that they did, Catholics were being persecuted in France, y'all. Catholics were being persecuted. The Edmondites came here, and they came to Vermont, to Canada, Vermont, Selma, Alabama, still in Selma feeding people every day. Feed people every day. Very connected to the civil rights movement, right, that took place. So because of that connection, and because I was fortunate enough to work with people with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee as my mentors in Mississippi, that came over because some of those folks was on that bridge that day when John Lewis was hit in the head, right, by the police on horseback, right? And so it's important for us to make the connections. Interdisciplinary scholarship, this is what this is. How can we connect the Edmondites and civil rights and pedagogy in the classroom, talking about what a house is and how to make all of us be at home, feel at home anywhere in the world. The world house, the framework that we're talking about today. How do we want the best for ourselves, and how do we want the best for other people's children as well? A lot of people want for their people, but not for every person. And one thing that I've learned growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in and the people that I grew up in, for the people that raised me, is that they wanted the best for other people too. But some of us don't. And we're gonna have to confront that ugliness about those of us who don't want the best for ourselves and other people. Because it's a hot mess. It's a hot, hot mess. My students know I say other words in the classroom. I'm trying to behave myself in front of everybody today. Okay, so with that, I want to transition. How much time do we have? I want to be respectful of time. We have 10 minutes. So what I want to share with you right now is the fact that because the earth is doing what the earth does, the Laudato Si is extremely important. We're going to continue to see a lot of storms go on. And so I want to introduce you. A lot of you know that we had a reggae artist, Medison, who came to visit us and spent a week with us as an artist. Right before he came, the Hurricane Melissa hit the island of Jamaica. And Medison is our liaison between the Peter Tosh Foundation, the Rastafari Mansions and Organizations, and Life Yard organization in Jamaica. So on February 1st, there's a webathon fundraiser to help them rebuild some of the centers that were devastated during Hurricane Melissa. You can join that webathon and make a contribution. The Peter Tosh Foundation, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of meetings with Peter Tosh's daughter over this past weekend. She actually lives in Boston. And the Peter Tosh Foundation has a website that you can go to and you can actually donate specifically for hurricane relief efforts. And if you're unfamiliar with who Peter Tosh is, I know you might be familiar with the song Legalize It, because of Vermont. Okay, let's just keep that real. But he also has a song called Equal Rights and Justice that you may want to look up and listen to. And if you don't, how many of you recognize who he's standing beside right there? Tell him who it is. Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. He worked with Mick Jagger. You can look them up. They performed together on Saturday Night Live way back. And so we're partnering with, St. Mike's is partnering with Peter Tosh Foundation around hurricane relief efforts, and they also have a donation page on their website and these are some pictures of Belmont where Peter Tosh was born. He was born in Grangeville, but he was born and raised in Belmont, Westmoreland, Jamaica. And right now they are in need, and I'm actually, because of scheduling of all the people involved, myself, Medicine, my colleague Jamila Gabrielle, who's at Harvard, and also Niambi McIntosh, which is their official name. It's not Tosh, it's McIntosh officially on the government name. But we're headed out to Jamaica, and we're going to trade as many supplies as we can in suitcases. But I'm going on a fact-finding mission to see what the needs are on the ground and come back and work with our people here on campus to figure out what can we do to go and help rebuild what we can in Westmoreland, also working with the young people at Life We Are, which is in Kingston, and also working in the Montego Bay Trelawney area with the Rastafari Mansions organization. This is part of a 5-year strategic plan, but it probably is going to take 10 years or more for people to actually rebuild. So this is generational work. It is long-term work. It is work that you can get involved in at any particular time or contribute to at any particular time. All right? So one request that I do have, if anybody knows if there are things that you can attach to you that keep mosquitoes off of you, I need a suitcase full of those. To take, not for me, for the people that don't have homes anymore. They're living under tarps right now, and they don't have anything to protect them from the elements. And so that is the work that we are trying to do. And I should want to read something here. You see what it says there? It says, born Winston Hubert McIntosh in 1944 in Westmoreland, Jamaica, Peter Tosh was deeply influenced by his mother, who ensured he had a Christian upbringing. This foundation led him to attend church daily when he sang in the choir, and learned to play the organ, laying the groundwork for his musical journey. At 16, Tosh moved to Trenchtown, a Kingston slum notorious for its challenging living conditions. Despite the hardships, this environment became a crucible for his musical ambitions. Right? So Niambi Tosh is carrying on the legacy of her father, and this is the work that needs to be done. There's work that needs to be done to help rebuild. And this is websites. You can take a picture of that if you'd like, or just go to petertoshfoundation.org or petertoshfoundation.org donate-now to help. And Life Yard in Jamaica is a collective that has transformed a strip of land into a small oasis consisting of sustainable farming and community development. It is also a haven in a tough neighborhood. So when we talk about farming here at St. Mike's, it's a big idea, it's ambitious, but what can we do to help in that regard? And I know we're gonna have a lecture next, right, about farming and Black farmers as well, all right? So at this point, the time do we have? Questions? Yeah.
Test.
I'll bring the mic to you. We have 5 minutes.
I'll try to make this quick. I apologize, it's not so much a question, but more just a thank you. Thank you for reminding us about the value of context and lived experience. I think in our day-to-day lives, we get hung up with so many things that move so fast, especially social media, short-form videos. we lose sight of the value of context, right? And hearing about your context, your lived experience is a great reminder for us all to kind of emphasize that. So thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Y'all don't want to talk to me. My feelings are gonna be hurt if nobody says anything. What am I supposed to do?
Besides the potential to keep mosquitoes away from people, do you have a list of other types of donations you're accepting, or you'll have that after your next trip?
Yes, I do have stuff for this trip. Extension cords. In Belmont, there's one community center where everyone has to go to charge their devices. They need extension cords. They have a generator, but it costs, I think, maybe $300 a month or more to put gas in that generator to keep it going so the whole neighborhood or the whole area can actually come there and have resources made available to them. I'm looking into tents that work well for in tropical areas, so that people can have something like bell tents that people can actually live in outside. And also an army tent as a central location as well. So there's several things that we've already discussed. I've been having meetings with people since November, actually, on Zoom meetings with all three of these organizations, and we've mapped out the different areas. We know we can't do everything. We're just trying to figure out what we can do. I don't know if Kate Soons is in here, but she's very enthusiastic about helping to train people in Jamaica to do disaster response because these hurricanes are going to keep coming. So how can we offer certifications through St. Mike's, or how can we bring people here for training in fire and rescue and medical services? So these are all things that are in the discussion phase right now. And after this fact-finding mission, I'll have additional information. And for those of you that pray and meditate, we just found out, well, I just found out that Life Yard is using a facility that's actually owned by the Catholic Church, by the diocese on the island. So if there's a partnership that can be made to help to fix that space up, so that we can actually go over and do work and have a hub space where we can do work on behalf of Life Yard. And Life Yard is a hub to get things to Belmont, which is 3 hours away. And then Montego Bay is another hour or so away. So we've been doing mapping and logistics around things as well. So there's a lot that's been happening and going on in these meetings. And now I'm at the point where I have to write all this up and present it to all of us here at St. Mike's to see what pieces we can actually work with. And those of you that are interested in possibly traveling to Jamaica, maybe not this year or in the fall, sign up with Laura Scott at MOVE organization, because likely, or with Peggy, I know I haven't reached out, Peggy, but you know I'm okay. But please make sure you're tapped into the service trips and how they function, right? And I'm looking at you too, all right? Everybody that's involved, right? So, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
And you mentioned that some of the work that you were looking at in the dissertation that your grandmother did is the kind of work that people have tried to denigrate. How did she speak of the work she did?
She did to me. She died when I was 17, right? So my mother held on to all of my grandmother's belongings. So when my mother passed away in 2013, me and my sister are trying to clean out the house and everything, and she's trying to take stuff to the curb for the trash man to pick up, and I'm bringing stuff back to under the carport. And this went on back and forth like a ping pong thing until we almost came to fisticuffs about this, okay? I don't know if you ever had battles with your siblings, but that got a little ugly, okay? And so when I'm yelling at her, right, some choice words like, bloop, something falls on my foot, and it's my grandmother's ledger. 64 page ledger with the composition notebook, right? And when I said, this is Medea's right. By the way, Medea is a term of endearment that people have been using long before Tyler Perry. Long before Tyler Perry, okay? So, yeah, it was Medea's handwriting. I recognized her handwriting. And I started looking at it, and I immediately put it in a safe place, and I've been carrying it around with me ever since. Yeah. So that's how that happened, because a lot of times Black women were the culture keepers, family Bibles, photo albums, when we used to actually take real photographs and put them in photo albums. That's documented history, right? So that's why I'm a historian of lived experience in segregated spaces, because I had documents to work from. If you don't have documents to work from, if all your pictures are in your phone and something happens to you and we can't get to those pictures, we don't know what's up. So in a way, we're losing history. So y'all utilize CVS, print some of that stuff and make some photo albums and write some stuff on the back of that stuff. Take some time, have a little party. Have a little photo, album party, right? Because we need that. We need that legacy. We need that history, right? Time for one more, we done. It's about that time. Anybody else? No students? I mean, not one student has a question. Thank you, Sugar. Thank you. Sugar is a term of endearment used by people from the South. I ain't flirting with nobody.
Okay, I actually lived in the South for a while.
Oh, okay, so you knew I was not flirting. All right, cool.
Yeah, I just want to know, when you're teaching, what are ways that you work to make your classroom community the most inclusive you can?
I have to tell everybody to behave themselves. Did y'all get a question? Yeah. She said, when I'm teaching, how do I make my classroom as inclusive as possible? Catholic social teachings, the dignity of all human beings. I communicate that. So everybody wants their dignity to stay intact, which means they're not going to try to remove someone else's dignity, right? It's okay to disagree, right? But we have to be respectful in our tone and our manner and how we ask questions of each other and try not to accuse people of anything. Right? So those are things that I actually say out loud in the classroom. We will respect each other in this classroom, or you will get out of my classroom. It's real simple, right? Yeah, and I have good and bad days, but if I have a bad day, I'm humble enough to apologize for my bad days. I'm at that stage of my development in life, right? But for the most part, just we have to see each other as humanity. And we have to respect ourselves and respect each other, and we want the best for ourselves and the best for others. And that's the energy that I try to bring with me everywhere I go in the world, but especially in the classroom. Because I'm not trying to have your parents come looking for me. My teacher said such and such. It's like, no, we're not gonna have that conversation. I would roll up on my child is 19, I would roll up on her teachers, okay? And I know your parents would roll up on me if they thought something was happening to you that was harmful, okay? And that's community, it really is, right? It's not appropriate, but it's community, okay? But you're grown now, you can handle it. You can solve your problems, you can figure things out, all right? So I do think we're out of time. I want to be respectful of our next speaker. Yes?
Absolutely. Can we give Jolivette and thank you so much.
Can somebody take our picture? Can somebody provide a camera and take our picture?
Let me just really quickly say, absolutely just fascinating sharing. It's always fascinating when Jolivette shares about her work and her research. We are going to take a short break and basically continue our day at 3:30 with our next speaker. We're so glad to be joined by our colleague Dale Bell, who has flown all the way from Selma, Alabama.
Yay!
And it's going to be an amazing talk about Black farming initiatives, rural development. I'm going to call you just momentary. And we absolutely want you to come back. If there are still books in the back that you would like to take, students first, please take Dr. King's last book. We want to offer that to you free of charge. If there are any other books there that are left, if any left, at the end of the day, no student is taking any, you're welcome to take what's left. We will be having food at about 4:30, and we are going to have amazing food from BIPOC restaurants. It's all free. You can come and eat to your heart's delight and enjoy talking to one another about what is happening today and just spend some time. We really would love that, so please come back. And at the end of the day, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Bindu Panikkar, who is a UVM professor, talking also about environment and her particular focus, tuning into our communities, improving our collective sensibilities. And so it's going to be an amazing talk. So please, come back. There's more to come, as we would say. Yes, Terry.
the Irish email where the South is here. That always starts to show in the South.
There's this thing that happens where we don't take enough pictures. Please, just because she's not gonna do that thing.